Welcome to episode 14 of the Backseat Fighter Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Binns, and I'm so excited about today's episode because I'm bringing you another fighter interview, this time with Bobby the Ghost Winther. He's 3-1 as a professional, and he's just absolutely dominating his opponents, to be honest with you. Great fight style, offered such great insight, great interview. Really appreciate his time. And yeah, I'm just really excited. And we're also going to have a little bit of a discussion about weight cutting, which is something that me and Bobby spoke about, and that's why I want to talk about it. But let's just get straight into the interview. Thank you guys so much for all the support so far. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow me on all platform social medias at the Backseat Fighter Pod. Just thank you so much for all the support so far, and let's just keep growing this community healthily. Let's get straight into the interview. But before we get into the episode, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone on the views and the support on the most recent content, especially the short form clips. But 94% of you are not subscribed, man. What are we doing? Subscribe, join the family. And I'm just happy to grow this community and grow MMA media more healthily than ever before. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get straight back to the episode. Today on episode 14 of the Backseat Fighter Podcast, I, Charlie Binns, have the honor of speaking with an extremely high IQ fighter. He pushes the pace. He's got deadly submissions and is coming off a win at Cage Warriors 182 in San Diego. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Backseat Fighter Podcast for the very first time, Bobby the Ghost Winther. Bobby, how's everything going, man?
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's going great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you came off the end of the year with a really, really good win, obviously at Cage Warriors 182. And how are the holidays? Everything good?
It was good, man. Yeah, going into holidays with a good performance like that was awesome. And then we kind of just kept it low key around here. Nice. And I got to do a little bit of skiing too. So
what? No, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I haven't skiing in a while. But yeah, I definitely want to talk about obviously your most recent fight against Blake Perry. But first, let's go back a bit. I mean, I watched your fights against Pablo Paciencia, even in the amateurs, against Nick Myers. I just noticed, even from the very start of your career in terms of fighting, from what I've seen anyway, you were always an extremely high IQ fighter. You mixed the pressure with the takedowns and the striking so well. And your coach, Vince, in a recent thing that I saw, said that you're a student of the game. Where does that come from, that ability to already have that IQ from the very, very start of your career?
Dude, I think that's just kind of a testament to the team I come from. Like, Vince is an extremely high IQ coach, high IQ coach.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. And everything is just very, everything has a reason. Like, we're not just doing, like when you're drilling something, we're not just drilling it for the sake of drilling it. We're doing it because there is a reason behind what we're trying to accomplish, or what we're trying to get to. And all of the coaches that I have worked with, they all have that in common. So I think you have no choice but to be a student when you're surrounded by coaches that are always treating the game that way.
Right. And that fight against Pablo Paciencia, was that your first fight ever at that point?
Yes. Yeah, bro,
right.
That was wild because it was like right after COVID. I had just moved to San Diego,
right.
And so I just started MMA. That was like a couple months into MMA, and they had like 21 fights on the card, right. And I went on at like 2:30 in the morning. It was insane. Yeah. So all the people that were there to watch me were like fading away in the crowd.
Dude, that happens all the time. I feel like even with the UFC, they did an event in the UK, I think in Manchester, and it was like the main event was like 5 a.m. All the people in the crowd were just asleep.
It's insane. Yeah. I was gonna say Bilal Muhammad versus Leon was that way. Like, they're literally sleeping before they're like on, you know?
Yeah. But I think even you mentioned in another interview or something that you didn't even know how to cut weight, you didn't know how to strike, you hadn't had that much, I guess professional training in MMA. So what's the mentality when you're stepping into the cage for the first time and you don't really know what you're doing other than, you're going to gut this out and try and win?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like pretty much just like whatever I'm good at, just get right to that.
Right.
It's kind of like just throwing yourself into the fire,
Yeah. And, that's an incredible mentality, because I think I spoke with a couple of fighters now, and, some fights like, I love to fight. It's what I want to do. And to hear someone like you go in there without, knowing much about the professional world or side of things, that's like the scariest thing ever for so many people. And I want to ask you, because I also heard you say that, being nervous for a fight is the same as being excited. There's the same emotion, just how you channel it. Kind of expand on that, and how do you use that now when you're, now 3-1 as a professional, really, getting big finishes and big wins?
Yeah, I had a coach when I first moved here. His name was Chuck Martinez, and I remember he kind of framed it that way for me. And I'm pretty sure he had gotten that from I think it was like Dan Henderson or something. I forget exactly who he was talking with that said it, and it's very true. I mean, anything I've done, even outside of fighting, that's been like very nerve wracking or kind of intense. It is the same exact feelings, like, because you kind of feel them both at the same time. Like, you're nervous, but like that nerves quickly turns into being exciting. And like description wise, the feelings never really like changed. It was just like a different way of like, oh, I'm not scared of this thing anymore. And now I'm just excited. But like physically, all the same emotions were going down. So to me, I think that's just important to remind yourself that, like, especially for fighting, like, I get to do this. Like, no one's holding a gun to my head saying, you will go out there, you will fight. Like, I was like, no, I'm, and that's what's cool about it, is like, I decide I want to be there. I don't have to fight if I don't want to fight. So I feel like that makes me the most dangerous person coming into the cage, because I just want to be there.
And does that kind of, I guess, aid your training? If you're just, because you enjoy it so much, you don't have to do it. Is that what's helping you keep it kind of refreshing when you're going through these long training camps that are hard, obviously, injury wise, mental strain wise? Is that what helps it keep refreshing for you, or, fresh in your mind?
Absolutely. I think like it's so important for me to keep it fun, because especially when it's not fun, because there's definitely times it's not, and that's part of it. If I'm feeling burnt out, I just kind of like will take a break for like, let's call it like a week, and I'll be like, the week time frame is like, all right, I'm starting to miss this again.
Nice.
I need to like find out why I like was doing this, and I always miss it every time I take a break. But those breaks are so necessary for me to keep it fun, because if not, then I'm just on burnout the whole time.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think obviously for MMA, for training, being a professional fighter, that's really true. But even for anybody that's not doing something for a long time over and over again, doing the same things, anything can get, to a level where it's burnt you out. So that's actually good advice to anyone. If you take a week out of time just to analyze what's going on and why you need to get back on the horse, that's actually a really
absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of people associate like taking a break with like being further away from your goals. And I think I used to do that too, or like they'll take it as like a form of laziness. And I think, like, again, it's how you frame it. Like, hey, I've been working really hard and I'm starting to come to a point where I'm not liking the thing I'm doing anymore, which that shouldn't add up, because it's like fighting is always something that's been joyful for me. So let me take a break from it and see if I'm going to really enjoy it again. And it always, without fail, I'm like, all right, I'm like itching at the, give me,
But I think this is something fighters have spoken about before. I know Michael Bisping, I think, is probably one of the most famous fighters or ex-fighters, who's kind of spoke about overtraining and always feeling that need to never be able to take a day off, and how it took a lot of confidence towards the end of his career to be like, I do need a day off. Like, I'm burnt out. I'm not practicing well. But going back to that bit about nerves and kind of, realize that you want to be there, you want to be in the fight, you want to do all of these things, and that helps you kind of get into your dangerous state once you're in the cage. Nice. So as I was saying before we got cut off, so yeah, well, before that bell rings, are you still nervous? Do you still have that, that feeling of excitement straight until the bell or through the first round? What's kind of going through your head emotionally once you're kind of putting your opponent against the cage and going for that takedown?
Honestly, like, you don't really have time to think about the emotions once the bell rings. Like I think I've talked with a lot of guys before this, but like the worst part is before the fight. And then during the fight, you're not really nervous anymore. You're just kind of pretty much acting on instinct and trying to accomplish the plan. So like, I can't really think about my feelings or like my emotions all that much, but there's definitely times within the fight that you're like, oh no, this isn't going my way.
Right. But I guess also with that, because when I watch your fights, there's obviously such clear strategy and plan, and a lot of thinking goes into the way you approach your opponents, whether it's like a tall guy like Blake Perry that we'll get into, or when you fought Nick Myers is also another tall guy. Is that going through your head as well, or is it already so locked into your muscle memory that you know exactly how you're going to approach it once you get in there? Or are you thinking through the steps that maybe you and your team have been through?
Yeah, like I guess as far as the length is concerned, I just trust that we've done all the work that we can to deal with that length. So it's more so just like, hey, let's just get to the plan and let's do the plan. And if we have to flex from that, then we have our backup plans to kind of keep working.
All right. Perfect. I mean, well, let's get into this Blake Perry fight, because that was, really, really dominant performance from you. Head and arm choke in the first round to get the finish. What did you know about Blake Perry going into that fight, and what was the plan, and how did you execute it?
I knew that Blake obviously was very tall, but I knew that he was tough. And that's just a prerequisite for fighters at this level too. Like, you have to be tough and you have to be hard to put away. I remember just kind of watching his first couple fights. And while he was like not always winning every position in there, like his first fight, I think he was losing the entire fight until he won the fight.
Wow.
He won a head and arm choke his fight. So I figured he had some slick submissions off his back. And then I knew he was going to be really tough because he broke his nose. He was winning that whole fight until he broke his nose, and he still wanted to keep fighting too. And one of the worst nose breaks. So I was like, damn, this guy is tough.
Right.
And his third fight against Josh Nakagawa, that guy, Josh, is tough too. So for him to kind of keep grinding it out with him, I just knew he was going to be a difficult fighter. But the thing that I had trusted about myself and was able to demonstrate is that I'm bottom line very tough. I've been able to demonstrate that in all my fights, but I'm extremely skillful. So like when I do get in there, you'll see there's just clear gaps, especially in the ground game. There's not going to be a lot of people that can keep up with me as far as like dominance when it comes to the ground. And I was able to showcase that in that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. And to the point of him being tough, I mean, you almost got him a couple of times in the submission before. You got him like a third attempt or something like that with the head and arm choke. So he was not trying to give up, and he was in there till the end.
He was there until he could not. He wasn't in the process anymore. I was like, dang,
he was never going to tap. He was never going to tap. You could tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know if people know, but you're also a Navy SEAL. And I know you can't talk much about that, but I think did you say you were always wanted to be a medic in the Navy SEALs? Was that?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, like I was always interested in medicine. Just being able to be the guy that people could just call if like when things got bad, like, hey, that's the guy that can fix me.
Right. And so when you're kind of talking about like, medicine and stuff like that, is that something that informs the way you now train in terms of maybe sparring, brain health, injuries, and how you fight in terms of your fight style? Because you're so dominant on the ground and you're able to kind of put people in a position where they can't really do much damage to you. Is that something that's informed your style?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. I really like it because I think a lot of fighters do need to hear that. It's like, you don't need to train to the point of like knocking each other out every sparring session. If you are injured, it's very difficult to take time off when you're injured, but like having someone to be able to tell you like, hey, you need to rest a little bit so that way we can actually have the longevity of our career. Like, can't be thinking of things in like this next fight is the only fight I got. Like, right. I'm thinking 20 fights down the road. Like, right. Can I still be doing what I'm doing right now, 20 fights in? And it's all how we trained and how we take care of our bodies. Like, if we're feeling a little bit beat up, or if we're sparring hard every single time, like, we're just not going to be able to last.
Right. And I think that's important for fighters to hear as well, because it's also about obviously extending your career, trying to perform at the highest level, reach place like the UFC, going to win titles and world championships. But it's also about after the career, right? It's about being able to enjoy life after it's all done.
Exactly.
But I wanted to hear your perspective on that, because I thought, because you wanted to be medicine, Navy SEALs and stuff like that, that you'd be able to give perspective on it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's even to the weight cutting point of like, I think that combat sports is a very unique sport in this way. where we cut weight to perform, which is unlike a lot of other sports. And I think while there is some advantages to cutting, when you cut too much, there is almost no advantage, or like the size that you get is not worth the energy that you'll lose. And I think a lot of fighters need to hear that too, because I think it's too like it's just too much like, oh yeah, you're gonna cut 30 pounds, and you're like, we're gonna cut 30 pounds. Like that's a lot of weight. Like like people just like say that so nonchalantly. It's like I'm gonna have a career. After my fighting is done, I want to be able to not have like diabetes, or I want to have like not all these endocrine, like I don't want my endocrine system to be completely shot.
Right.
And that's when you'll start to notice that, is when you're older and you're not fighting anymore.
Right. I feel like I don't know this case. I don't know, this guy's health status and what he goes through and his blood work and all that stuff. But a guy that people speak about that with is Paddy, the Paddy Pimlet. He balloons up so much in between fights, and he's cutting so much weight through camp. And then obviously, with the water cut before fights, that you do kind of worry about, maybe the eating disorder side of things, or, in the end after post career, like you mentioned.
Yeah. And the eating disorders is like just something people will be like, oh yeah, look, whatever, you're going to get one. And it's like, you're just going to get it. That's insane.
Because I think that's with a lot of things that people don't understand, that the sacrifices that you guys put in when you're not only risking what you're doing when you're in there, but all the weeks and the lifestyle leading up to actually stepping foot in the cage. What would you say for you, just really quickly before we get on to probably the last two questions, is the biggest sacrifice you make during camp, or just as a fighter now, really looking to push on? What's the biggest sacrifice you make?
Time. Time is the biggest sacrifice. We're trying to like live our lives, like our regular lives, and then like trying to figure out how to train appropriately in there, especially when there's not a ton of money involved. So like a lot of the guys, like we all have like second jobs. Like we have like our real jobs, and then like we're all trying to make it in fighting, and hopefully that like fighting becomes the job that we all can do. Hopefully we get to the sport where like these entry level pros can like have this have like an opportunity to be like, hey, you're gonna get paid kind of like how the MMA Fight Academy does it, where like, hey, you're gonna get paid to be a full-time fighter. It's base level at first, but it's all you need as like a fighter. And then you can slowly build your career and get people off the ground. I think we're going to see a lot more talent come into the MMA, the whole MMA scene, if we start treating like programs like that. Like we start treating them like they're football clubs in a sense, where you're like, hey, 16 years old, we know that this kid's going to be good. We're paying for all of his stuff. We're going to pay for everything. And we're going to put him into a spot to where he can not have to work and just solely fight. And it's like, I think that's where MMA should be heading.
Right. I think that's a really great point, because I always try to speak about trying to grow MMA in a healthy way, but it just, a lot of levels, like basically UFC and everything under the UFC has a lot of struggles with, fighters obviously having to have multiple jobs. There's not enough investment in up and coming talent. And I think part of that is just because MMA is so young, it's, how 30, 40 years old, maybe?
Yeah. And that's such a young sport in comparison to all the other ones. Like and it's kind of cool to see it, because you're seeing what kind of most of these other sports went through before we were all alive. Like we like, you don't get to see the struggles that like football, like American football too, like how it all kind of like had to struggle like back in the stuff. Yeah. So it's like, I think MMA, I think that's the way to do it. I think there's enough rich people that actually like MMA. So sorry, my cat is jumping up here.
No, I think it's a great point. And yeah, I mean, definitely like keep trying to talk about that on your side. I want to keep talking about that, because the sport has so much room to grow, especially for opportunities for fighters. But speaking of opportunities for fighters, I saw in an interview after your fight at Cage Warriors 182, you spoke about that you had a little conversation with Dana White at some point saying, I'm going to be in the UFC one day. What is the roadmap for you ideally? Is it another couple fights in Cage Warriors? What is next for you in terms of getting to the UFC and proving, your skills on the bigger stage?
Yeah. So the goal is to get into the UFC. I want to be a world champion in the UFC. I think that's the most. And as far as MMA is concerned, I think it's undisputed that is that's the most sought after thing for MMA fighters. So, without a doubt, that's the goal that I want to be at. As far as like how to get there, I'd like to do that with Cage Warriors. I have one more fight left on my contract with them. I really enjoy fighting with Cage Warriors. They've given me such a great platform, and I think that they are like that organization that can get fighters into the UFC. I think the way it would probably look for me, just being on the state side, hopefully they can get me out to Europe and fight a few fights out there, mixed with the San Diego scene, and then maybe the Contenders series goes ahead and sorry about that. Maybe the Contender series goes ahead and kind of reaches out, makes a call, and be like, hey, we want your fighters over here. And I think Cage Warriors has like a very good relationship with the UFC to do that too.
All right. I mean, you definitely got the talent and honestly, the finishing ability and the entertaining fight style where I think, at least with that one fight left in your contract, big win. And I know they're coming back to the UK. They're going to Rome, I believe, Cage Warriors.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of opportunities for you there. And yeah, definitely, I think, let it be known here, Bobby Winther's coming for the UFC.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, I know I really appreciate taking the time. But the last thing I usually do with fighters on the podcast is we play a little one-word association game with other fighters. Now, this is a mix of Cage Warriors fighters, maybe some of your teammates, maybe your opponents, and some UFC fighters as well. But it's just one. I'm going to say a name, and you just say one word to describe that. You can explain after, but okay. Ready?
Gotcha.
Okay. Eddie Alvarez.
Oh, OG.
OG, right? You're from Philadelphia, right? As well, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, Philly legend.
Yeah, so he's a gangster for sure.
Okay. Teammate, I believe, Anthony Orozco, also fought at Cage Warriors 182.
My boy, absolutely.
Yeah, he's a really top level talent as well. I mean, he destroyed the guy at 182.
Talk about just star power. I mean, if you want to see anyone that's got star power as far as like a young pro fighter, it's him. I mean, he's got everything. He's got an exciting fight style. He's got exciting finishing it. He's got ability to finish people in various different ways, and it's good on the mic.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Ilia Topuria, featherweight champion in the UFC right now, just knocked out Max Holloway.
I mean, unprecedented. Like the things he's doing is just unbelievable, and he's so cool. He's a fighter that I watched a shit ton of Ilia Topuria's study to get ready for this fight with Blake, because it's like he's always a shorter guy. Right. He has longer arms, but he's always a shorter guy, and I would love to have a fight style like him.
The way you pressure is very similar. You're so on the front foot, and you just back your opponents up onto the cage, where it's similar to Ilia. I mean, he's more like just such pure power that he has. Yeah. It's incredible.
His boxing is so good that it's something I envy. And I think because he's such a good striker, because he's such a good grappler, he developed like being very good with the boxing and like just some low kicks and stuff like.
And similar to you, I mean, your base is jiu-jitsu. So, and you've developed something in the striking. I mean, that Marcus, forget his name, Marcus Walston.
Walston, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I TKO'd him with a huge right hand. That kind of wobbled him before the final sequence. But yeah, Ilia, incredible. John Jones, heavyweight champ, big fight coming up this year for him, probably with Tom Aspinall, hopefully. But
he's the GOAT. If Tom Aspinall can do it against him, like good for Tom Aspinall. I think Tom is probably the most athletic heavyweight, athletic, but like just all around good heavyweight out there. The fact that he knocked out Sergey Pavlovich, I was like, to knock him out is insane, because that guy has some serious power.
Oh my God, yeah.
But yeah, John Jones is the GOAT. You can just see he is just levels above people. Yeah. I think Tom Aspinall will give him a good run for his money, though.
I think for me, I've said it a couple of times, I think it's the biggest threat to John that I've seen, at least since I've been watching the sport. I mean, he's huge, heavyweight, fast as hell, that it's going to give John some problems. But you never know. John can beat anybody. So it's a really exciting fight.
He's almost deceptive with how big and fast he is, because like you just see him, you're like, oh, he can't be that big. And then you look at his weight and you're like, he's almost at this, I think he's like 260 260, right?
Yeah, he's 260, and you see him next to like other heavyweights. You're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like he's gigantic.
He's enormous, yeah. And he's got the knockout power, as you said, so well rounded. So I think it's really exciting for all MMA fans, that big fight there. And also he's former Cage Warriors, right? So
yeah,
that'd be cool to see former Cage Warriors heavyweight champion of the world. So
love that.
All right. Blake Perry, your last opponent.
Tough dude. Tough, nice guy.
You had a beer after the fight or something?
Yeah, no, I didn't get a chance to see him after the fight. I had a lot of people in the crowd for me, so it was like getting showered with a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get a chance to say. Him and I talked after the fight, but he's a cool dude. I really liked him.
Cool. Okay, two more. These guys are included together. The Diaz brothers, Nick and Nate Diaz.
I mean, just tough. Like if you're gonna like see who's tough, man, those guys are just tough.
Yeah, they're literally tough as nails. Okay, and last one, Bobby Winther. One word to describe Bobby the Ghost Winther.
Oh, that's a good one. I feel like if I had to pick one word to describe myself as a fighter, it would be relentless.
A good one. That's exactly how you fight. And yeah, thank you so much for doing this interview. I really, really appreciate you taking the time. Sorry to the little technical issue there and everything.
Oh, it's okay. I really appreciate you having me on here. I appreciate what you're doing for fighters like myself who are up and coming, because these are the platforms we need to be noticed. So I appreciate it.
Same for you, man. I'm kind of starting out in this game. I really love it. Want to be covering, all of you guys, and just happy to help document your journey, man.
Dude, absolutely. Anytime you want to do an interview, I'm always down, bro.
Cool. Thank you so much. And yeah, obviously, is there any big fight plan now for first quarter of next year, second quarter of next year? What's the plan?
I'm still in talks with Cage Warriors, trying to get them to get me out on one of the European cards. Whether that's either London, Manchester, or Rome, or Glasgow. Either one of them, I'll go to any of them. Just say yes and set up a fight, and I'll figure out a way to get out there.
Yeah, man, that's such a cool experience that you can go see the world through fighting. It's really cool.
I know, yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much. This has been episode 14, a little interview here with the ghost Bobby Winther. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Awesome, thank you, Charlie.
So I want to talk a little bit about what me and Bobby talked about there, which was a lot about weight cutting and this idea of kind of formulating your training and your fight style around your physical health. But let's start with the weight cutting thing. I mean, it's crazy how much weight these guys cut before fights. If people don't know, sometimes it's 30 to 40 pounds before a fight. These guys are cutting through dieting, in training camp, barely eating, no calories, in a deficit the entire time, training 2-3 times a day at high intensity. And then obviously the water cut that they do either in the sauna, the steamer, with the towels, with the sauna suit, running on the treadmill. I think we've all seen images and pictures of that. This is what makes the difference between a sport like MMA and basketball, for example. In basketball, you can play every 1, 2, 3 days. And yes, obviously there's a physical toll on the knees, the joints, the body. Trust me, I played basketball, I know. But in MMA, you physically cannot do the sport. You cannot compete in a fight every 2 or 3 days. Now that obviously is because of the damage you might take in the ring. You might get injured in the actual fight. But obviously the training, the physical and mental toll that Bobby referred to, where you need to take a break, you might get burnt out, obviously. But what I'm talking about specifically is the weight cutting. You physically cannot do a weight cut 2 or 3 times a week. You know what I'm saying? And, I actually want to talk a little bit about this because Bobby brought it up that there's some scientific reasons, there's actual medical reasons why it's unhealthy and not good, and how it can lead to things like eating disorders. And why after fighters are done fighting in their retirement, they balloon up and they're not healthy. Their insulin and everything like that he referred to is all messed up. I don't know if that was on camera or on camera. I can't remember right now. But he basically said that their bodies and their hormones get all messed up because of the way they had treated their bodies in terms of diet their entire career. So Bobby's trying to do that differently. Bobby's trying to do it correct. He's read a lot of books. He spoke about the fight dietitian, who runs all the nutrition and weight cutting for people like Dan Hooker, Israel Adesanya, Kai Kara France, that entire camp over there at City Kickboxing. So these things, in terms of weight cutting, it really does affect fighters, mental health, eating disorders, ability to live their lives normally after they're done. but there's no obvious solution, right? And let me talk a little bit about this, right? First, I think for me, the biggest example I've ever seen of, it's kind of a theory, but of cutting weight affecting a fighter's career so detrimentally in an explicit manner is Tony Ferguson. And I'm going to explain why. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, that Tony Ferguson was on the 5th time they had scheduled Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. Tony Ferguson had made the weight, and then Khabib either missed weight, got injured, wasn't able to fight. At which point Tony Ferguson, thought the fight was off, cancelled. Obviously had gained the weight back from his weight cut down to 155. But then a month later had a rescheduled bout with Justin Gaethje. And he had to go back down to 155. And I think that was a lot of people's questions heading into that Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson fight. I think it was the first main event back during COVID, first sporting event. I believe so. I'm not sure. There was no fans there. But I think it was like the first Apex event, But then in that fight, obviously, Tony Ferguson off the back-to-back weight cut gets the most damage I think I've ever seen a fighter take without being knocked out. Absolutely brutalized. And people have pointed to that, and I will certainly point to that fight, that damage that Tony Ferguson took there as the turning point in his career. So when you really think about it, weight cutting, not only is it affecting your diet, it's affecting obviously your physical health and your diet because you're not able to get enough calories, you're having to lose weight, and that can lead to injury. It's affecting your hydration, which obviously is terrible for you. As Bobby mentioned, it's affecting your hormones so that after you're done fighting, your body's not right, you're all out of whack and you're unhealthy. Did I mention eating disorders? I don't know. I'm on where I am on the list. But the biggest thing for me that I said to Bobby, I don't know if it was off camera, was that the actual hydration after you've cut weight isn't quick enough to refill the liquid that goes around your brain that stops you from getting knocked out. So if you have a tough weight cut, that's why it's a bit of a problem that you can get knocked out easier. That's why, at 185, Alex Pereira was probably easier to knock out than he is at 205. Because think about the amount of weight Alex Pereira, one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen, was cutting to get to 185 in those wars against Adesanya, against Sean Strickland. I think we overlook it sometimes as spectators of a sport because we can't relate to that lifestyle. And I think people don't really understand how hard a training camp is without cutting weight. Or not even a training camp. Like, I started Muay Thai. I want to start Jiu-Jitsu. I think you have to even just go for a couple months to those classes where you're doing it in 1 hour session and maybe just don't eat or drink before the session and try and go on a high intensity session. You'll be exhausted. So now imagine doing that when you're cutting weight and all these things that, people like Joshua Flash on Wardy, somebody I interviewed, said, people don't understand that you're cutting weight, that it's really hard to do all of these things, train at the same intensity. And then people are complaining about they're thirsty, that they haven't had water that day or whatever. And you're like, bro, I'm cutting weight. Like, leave it. Like, you have no perspective. Do you know what I mean? So that's all I wanted to say really in terms of that specific thing. But I think it's just a lot of our appreciativeness of fighters on this podcast, on this show, is about these physical sacrifices that they take. And, I can't imagine somebody like, who's a really active fighter, Izzy Adesanya or Alex Volkanovski, when you've already reached championship level, when you're defending your belt or you're in a title fight over and over again, to still have that drive to be in the camps, to make weight, cut weight. And I know these guys are making the big bucks, right? They're champions in the UFC, so they're obviously more motivated in an economical, financial sense. But you have to think about it, right? When you have enough money like Izzy Adesanya has, what's pushing him to still cut weight, to still, push himself through that zone, that wall of burnout that probably you get. Now, Izzy Adesanya did take a break. He did take a year off, but for him, that was huge. We felt like he was gone forever if you're a UFC fan because Izzy was fighting every couple of months. But yeah, and I think that's what Bobby also mentioned. He was like very mature, very intelligent on the way he looked at taking a break, not getting burnt out. he said that, every time I feel a bit burnt out, I take a week off to completely decompress, but also self-reflect and analyze why exactly it is I'm burnt out. Is it injuries? Is it because I'm not getting maybe the training or the techniques that I want to train? Am I doing the same thing too much? Do I feel like I'm not progressing? And I think that's always important for fighters to do. And as I said in the interview, anyone in life, if you're feeling burnt out, you can take a beat to just analyze and self-reflect and maybe feel like build that love back up, build that excitement back up for what you're doing. But I just wanted to come here after the interview and speak a little bit about that. And I definitely want to have some, people on the podcast who are more into the medical sports science side of this game. I would love to have the fight dietitian on. I would love to have people like Luke at RSB Boxing, Rocksteady Boxing. I still need to send that project. Goddamn. There's been some technical mistakes with that, but for people who are, training people with Parkinson's disease. I mean, there's a lot of ways mixed martial arts is helping, or martial arts in general, help people, and lessons that we can all learn outside of obviously enjoying the big fights. And obviously big fights got one of the biggest cards here ever. I've mentioned it again, signed by John Jones, Amanda Nunes, Cyborg, Alexander Gustafsson, a lot of other people on that card, obviously. UFC 232, when John Jones got his light heavyweight title win against Alexander Gustafsson in their rematch. But yes, what I will mention though, obviously, is we've got some big things planned for the podcast this year. And by we, I mean I. We're going to have a giveaway coming soon. I'll let you guys know. If you stayed all the way through the podcast, you're hearing it first. There's going to be a giveaway soon. I'll let you guys know what that is. And of course, we're back into the full swing of things with the UFC calendar this weekend, the first fights. So on Thursday, we're getting back into the full swing of the podcast, back to 2 times a week for all you lovely people out there. And you'll have my predictions and analysis for that fight. And of course, we're going to be having bigger interviews, I've got some good contacts in the game now. I'm very, very excited about the possibilities of who I could have on, more UFC fighters, Cage Warriors fighters. And I'm just really excited about how this is all going. Sometimes life gets a little bit tough, you know what I mean? And you are just working, and I'm just want to keep working for this podcast and keep trying to, bring about opportunities, not only for myself, but obviously for these fighters, and just to be able to meet these great people. It brings me a lot of joy and fulfillment. So I'm just happy to hopefully be a source of, light in sports media, and especially MMA media, where sometimes I feel like it's all negative. I really struggle to be negative about anything in this space. Can I say a fighter should have done something different to what they did? Not always. I'm not a fighter. I can't really be too negative towards them because they're doing something that a lot of us can't do. So I struggle to find the footing to be able to go, well, you did this, you did this, you did this, right? And I think a lot of people these days, especially on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, or Instagram, or all these social medias, are so quick to be able to judge people in general. But with fighters, they just need to be protected because they're doing something that, none of us could do. They're risking it all in there. I think somebody like Bobby Winther, who spoke with today, is a perfect example of somebody who understands the game, who understands where they want to go, an intelligent fighter. And it's actually one of the fighters I've spoken to who's actually thinking about things like brain health, who's thinking about things like injuries, who's thinking about things like, how to cut weight safely, he's researching, reading books, how to protect his body against eating disorders and maybe, messing it up with the way that you have to play with your body, unfortunately, to be a professional in this game at this level. So anyway, that's been me, Charlie Binns, for episode 14. I keep forgetting, of the Backseat Fighter Podcast. Subscribe, please. We're trying to get to at least 100 subscribers soon. And you're gonna need to be subscribed to be in the giveaway. So subscribe and keep up with all the short form content. I really, really love the support we've got on that, and keep the discussions going, guys. Let me know what you think about things that I'm saying. And I'll see you soon for episode 15 on Thursday, when we're discussing the big fights to start off the UFC this year. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.